All right, Mech Command, we're taking a look at some mechs that, from my perspective, I asked the question the other day on the community tab, what mechs should we be looking at? What are some of those hidden gems in Battletech? There are so many mechs, not enough battle value, not enough time to play them. But in terms of player personality, tactica, I'm always open to new opportunities. And the two ways that you kind of get introduced to these opportunities is one, you see it on the tabletop and hopefully not get beaten on the tabletop. There are many mechs that I've seen my friends play and seeing it real time and with their tactica. It's interesting. So there's a buy-in right there. The other aspect is when you're looking through the tech manuals, either online or old school, and you see some mechs, something catches your eye, it looks kind of cool, the narrative's interesting. But even with that, there are still mechs, and this is what gets me so excited still about Battletech. And especially you guys, your recommendations, keeping me in the game, literally. There are so many mechs out there that I'm not aware of all of them. Maybe I saw them once or twice, passed over it, but trying to bring some of those hidden gems to the forefront. So we're jumping in. I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Xanthos. This is essentially the Goliath on steroids, and we're going to get to the Goliath. On a side note, I play the Goliath. I will play the Goliath, but I also play it in kind of a troll list where that's the only mech, and it's backed up by tons and tons of just low battle value, short-range missile hovercraft, and of course, infantry and Karnovs. So I flood you and buzz you with the infantry and the hovers, and depending on the battle value, 1 to 4 Goliaths just kind of go in and try to trash things in theory. And we're going to look at the Goliath and we're going to look at that list. But the first thing I look at with this, I'm like, this is a super Goliath. 100 tons. 100 tons. So first thing right there, it's a beast of a buy-in. It's going to have the armor. It's going to have the toys. It's going to have the reputation. But the battle value, you jump in at 100 tons. And we see this with Inner Sphere type stuff because this is kind of beginning Inner Sphere / Star League. But you see this with Inner Sphere mechs like the Atlas and the Awesome. They're expensive pieces of hardware. So if you're committing to that battle value in a lower point game, that's a lot to tie up in one piece. I'm not saying don't do it, but there's some synergy that needs to happen. Likewise, even if you're playing a higher battle value game, we want to be somewhat mindful to those opportunities. So jumping in from that perspective and looking at this, the first thing I'm looking at is 100 tons. It's going to wreck at 100 tons. It's going to represent, but we need to have some sort of plan to effectively utilize it. Weapons, let's jump in. Autocannon 20, PPC, SRM 6, 3 medium lasers, and facing the rear just for the lulls, we've got a small laser. So at range, it's got a PPC. It's firing away. This, I see this mech as a close-in type mech, literally an assault type mech where it's going to go towards a point on the table and be an anchor piece because it doesn't have really enough dedicated long-range firepower. We're not looking at 2 PPCs. We're not looking at a PPC and a LRM 20 pack. We're looking at 1. So the first thing in terms of the long range with the PPC over, say, an LRM 20, a different type of configuration on a super heavy or an assault mech, I'd like the PPC. My first thought is give me the LRM 20 to reach out at range, but that's going to be a potential spread. It's never going to do the full damage. The PPC is consistent, 10, 10, 10, 10. Of course, I have to hit. Modifiers up, down. We'll kind of work on that, but that gives me something on the way in. So ideally to try and score a couple of hits, maybe shake things up a little bit, but I don't see this as a mech that's going to be chasing people around. It's going to be working and pushing in that direction. Now when we get closer, this is where things get interesting, and it has the heat to really push this. A short-range missile 6-pack, 3 medium lasers, and an autocannon 20. So we're going to go from long range with the PPC. Then as soon as we're in range, it's going to be a long range for those lasers. We're going to start firing. When we get to that mid-range, this is where I see the mech starts to come in because we've got the 3 mediums and we've got the 6-pack. When we get to point blank range, that 6-pack and the autocannon 20 is just going to blast away. Now, an autocannon 20 on a 100-ton mech, yeah, absolutely. I don't think that's a novelty. I think you mount that for that super heavy in punch, but you also have the tonnage to be able to play around with other things in the game. So a point-and-click type mech, how do we utilize this mech? We're not chasing things down. We're going to identify, I see this as identify a stronghold, a strong point. Identify that point on the tabletop and drive to that point. I don't see this, I literally see this as being as part of an assault lance, or not that I want a mech to work alone if I had to, because it does have the tonnage and the weapons to do that. It's going to try and move in and smash through that point. I don't see this as part of a generalized lance that might be called on to be a couple of different places on the table during the game or engage some different things. It just doesn't have the movement, and it doesn't have the weapons to be chasing stuff down. So what does this buy versus other 100-ton mechs from that perspective? How does it utilize it? Well, again, I see this as medium to close-in work. It has the PPC instead of the LRM-20. A solid mech. I'd have to, if I saw this on the table after I check out the tech sheet, I'd have to have a plan to try and stop this thing. I'd have to have a plan to try and deal with this, because every turn it's going to be marching closer and closer, walking, running to that point on the table. And it's one thing to start out first couple of turns taking a PPC shot, and it has the heat sinks just to fire it no matter what, to clear it. But then that pressure is going to build as we get closer and closer. Now I've got to deal with some medium lasers and a 6-pack. Then it's going to finally arrive, and I've got to deal with the autocannon 20 on top of it with heat to manage it. Ideally, I stop it somehow way before that, way before that. So from that tactica, that perspective, building that checklist, how does it fit into your lance? How does it fit into your play style? And if this is a mech that you're regularly playing, I'd be interested to get some feedback, because I could see this again as a super Goliath.